The saga of 15-year-old Justina Pelletier is long and contorted. The child is sick and her parents lost custody when Children's Hospital took over her care and accused the parents of child abuse. Justina was locked in a psychiatric ward at Children's for 11 months. Now, though, her circumstances have changed. Living with her family in West Hartford, Justina Pelletier was a normal, active girl, even though she had been diagnosed with mitochondrial disease as a child. But something changed in 2013. She had just finished a skating competition when she developed flu-like symptoms. At first, doctors at Tufts Medical Center attributed the symptoms to her mitochondrial disease. But then Children's Hospital got involved. They changed the diagnosis to a mental disorder, accused her parents, Lou and Linda Pelletier, of abuse, and took custody, only allowing them to see her once a week. Since then, the Pelletiers have been fighting to get their daughter back. And last week, a Massachusetts court ruled that Justina be released from Children's but go into foster care. The family and their supporters were outraged.
Here's what they want. They want their daughter with them. There's no argument that she was doing better under their care than under the care of the government.
Linda Pelletier fainted in court after hearing Justina would be put in foster care. All right, and joining me now is Justina's father, Lou Pelletier, who was at the State House today testifying about his battle with DCF over the custody of his daughter. Welcome to Greater Boston, Lou.
Thank you for having me.
What did you tell the legislators at the State House today about your daughter and about DCF? What did you say?
I just got into really what's happened from the beginning, because many people have caught bits and pieces depending on how well they follow the story. So I try to get into really a little bit more of the nuts and bolts, what's going on, how she was treated successfully at Tufts Medical Center, was school, ice skating, living the dream. All her doctors were treating her successfully. Unfortunately, early February, she got the flu, and her GI doctor and the rest of his team that were involved with doing a procedure with her, and she had neuropathy of the colon, had transferred from Tufts in January of the month to go to Boston Children's. So February 10th of 2013, she goes by ambulance from Connecticut, goes to Boston Children's to go through the emergency room, but to be a direct admission to the GI floor. But a young neurologist comes along, says there's no such thing as mitochondrial disease, and then it was the beginning of the nightmare.
Yeah. Well, let me ask how she's doing now. I know you have very limited visits with her, and there was this court hearing last week where she has been moved into a foster care. How does she look? How does she feel to you? Just what was her basic condition?
She went from a healthy as could be young lady to a person now in a wheelchair, pretty much paralyzed below the hips, almost no physical strength above the hips. She has been totally medically abused. You know, she had tachycardia, medically diagnosed, was on metoprolol for that. Since she's been at Boston Children's through DCF custody, she's been off that. So she's had a heart rate of anywhere from 100 to 152, medically verified. Number two, she had a cecostomy tube placed into her colon so she can go to the bathroom for neuropathy of the colon. And when you're a mitochondrial patient, you're more sensitive to your nerves, kind of like somebody with fibromyalgia. So she was taking Lyrica to deaden the nerve pain. So she's been in severe pain nonstop, 24 hours a day for 13 months.
You know, Lou, for those of us who've never been through this, any interaction with Children's or DCF, it's almost hard to believe that they have the right to take over custody and control of the treatment of your daughter. And furthermore, basically accusing you of child abuse by interfering with these, what they call invasive procedures, which included the operation with the colon. I mean, how can that be? How you had no rights? I know you have legal representation. How could that happen?
Boston Children's has been running the show. They dictate. Remember, was roughly 2 days into the arrival there, where she came in. They said there's no such thing as mitochondrial disease. They didn't come out and say what their ulterior motive was. So the first couple of days, we went along, said everything is fine. But roughly day 3, we find out that they want to pull her off all her medications, including, her vitamin cocktail that mito patients are given. But more importantly, they wanted no interaction with both her old doctors. Her Dr. Corson, who was director of metabiology at Tufts, was blocked from having any interaction. And the doctor she came to see, the director of GI at Tufts, who was her doctor there for 2 years, was not allowed to see her. And that's why I said, time out, we're going to take her out of here and bring her back to Tufts.
Were they accusing you of that Munchausen by proxy, which is this case where you abuse or injure your children in order to get sympathy for yourself? Were they accusing you of something like that?
Well, that's interesting. 12 hours into arrival, which we found out afterwards in the medical records, their actual diagnosis they came up with was somatoform disorder, like psychosomatic. But when we went to that court that Friday the 15th, what was said in court, though, was Munchausen by proxy. But Munchausen by proxy means a parent or parents is putting their kids in various drugs to get them to be sick. So if somebody has that and they're now in a hospital, within a few days, that would go away. So they just used that initially to get the court and the judge scared, but deep down they had their ulterior motive, which was to say it was somatoform, and that everything she had, all the procedures that were done, were not necessary. Everything done to her, her cecostomy tube, medically verified through an 8-hour probe into her colon to prove that she had neuropathy of the colon. A few years earlier, she was found to have she had a stomach blockage. They didn't know what was going on. So this was in Connecticut. They ended up doing an exploratory surgery, finding out she had 20 inches of cartilage wrapped around her colon and her appendix. It was known as a congenital band. For anybody who's watched the old Poltergeist movies, the young blonde girl, she actually died just at the end of the filming of the third movie from a undiagnosed congenital band that ruptured and
I didn't know that. Take me to the present now. Last week, unfortunately, your wife, I mean, I think I would have fainted myself hearing that you're going to move my child from Children's into a foster home, and who knows what kind of medical care you're getting there. But what is the next procedure? Because it sounded like, from what I read anyway, that the court system in Massachusetts anyway was going to figure out a way to get her back into your care. Do you feel confident about that?
No. First of all, the reason my wife fainted was they threw out a bone. They're going to drop this contempt of court
about the gag order.
Gag order and all that. And thank God I did it, because we probably wouldn't be, at least at this phase. But the same token, he said, in 2 days, we're going to move her, because she's been out of Boston Children's since January 9th. She's been in a temporary psychiatric residential facility in Framingham called Wayside, which is designed to only have people there 2 weeks or less. And number two, it's not designed for anybody with medical. But at that court hearing, they said they were going to move her from Wayside in Framingham to a facility called the Shared Living Collaborative in Merrimack, Massachusetts, which, again, no medical. It's out in the northern border of Massachusetts on the New Hampshire border, and it was just too much for my wife to handle. So their game plan is to keep, no matter what, DCF somehow involved. And that led us to the, now they're saying, oh, we do want to now bring in the Tufts doctors. So they're basically admitting after 13 months they were wrong. They did major medical malpractice, they screwed up, they went off to the psychiatric diagnosis, which was incorrect. But the disheartening thing, that thing that's still mind-boggling, is they still want to have DCF involved, whether it be the state of Massachusetts DCF or the state of Connecticut.
Even if she gets home with you?
Even if she comes home.
Well, wouldn't that be a decent compromise?
No. Having dealt with DCF for 13 months, there is no more compromise. They have facilitated the torture and pain of my daughter for 13 months. And ultimately, they're not pulling the strings. It's Boston Children's Hospital. Boston Children's, first 2 months of her arrival there, DCF was nowhere to be found. It wasn't until after 2 months where she was moved from the neurology floor to this Beta 5 inpatient psychiatry, where DCF all of a sudden started showing their happy faces.
Well, Lou, it certainly is really a nightmare of a story, and we wish you the best of luck with it.
Yeah, it's just, my goal is, number one, to protect my daughter, but there's thousands and thousands of people that have been reaching out to me to help save their daughter or son. So once I can help save my daughter, I have other missions to go on down the road.
Lou Pelletier, thank you so much.
God bless you. Thank you so much.